Namaste everyone, I'm your co-host Shawnee ma'am. Welcome to your favorite learning channel. The topic for today's video is overview of animal tissue classification. So today we will be looking at the overview of classification of animal tissues. We will study about different types of animal tissues and their classification, but this will just be an overview. In our upcoming videos we will be taking up each of the different types of tissues present in animals as separate videos. Okay, so let's now look at the overview of classification of animal tissues. So there are different types of tissues present in animals. So the four different types of animal tissues are the muscular tissue, epithelial tissue, nervous tissue and connective tissue. So what are muscular tissue? First we will study about this. So muscles which contract and relax to make movements of our body possible are made up of these muscular tissues. Now muscular tissues can be further classified into three types, that is the cardiac tissue, the voluntary or striated muscular tissues and the involuntary or non-striated muscular tissues. So these cardiac tissues are those that are only present in heart, and these cardiac tissues are involuntary muscles because their action or their movement is not under the direct control of one's will. Okay, and these tissues are present only in our heart. Then there is voluntary or striated muscles. So these striated muscles are also known as voluntary muscles because they are under the direct control of one's will. And these muscles are made up of, or they consist of, striations. Hence they are also known as striated muscles. Then there are involuntary or non-striated muscles. So these non-striated muscles are also known as involuntary muscles because they are not under the direct control of one's will. And these muscles, as they do not have striations, they are also known as non-striated muscles or smooth muscles because they show a smooth appearance without the presence of striations. Okay, so this was about the muscular tissue. Then we will study about the epithelial tissue. So what are epithelial tissues? They are thin protective layers of cells that covers the surface of our body and lines the internal organs. So epithelial tissue can be further classified into following types, that is the glandular tissue, the squamous tissue, the cuboidal tissue, ciliated tissue and columnar epithelial tissue. So these are the different types of epithelial tissues. So what are glandular epithelial tissues? So they are involved in releasing and production of secretory products like mucus, sweat, saliva, etc. Those are the tissues that we call glandular epithelial tissue. Then there are squamous tissues or squamous epithelial tissues. So these tissues consist of flat cells and are found in the walls of blood vessels, in skin, etc. Then there are cuboidal epithelial tissues. They consist of cube shaped cells and are found in the lining parts of body like kidney tubules, walls of respiratory bronchioles, etc. Then there are ciliated epithelial tissues. So what are ciliated epithelial tissues? They are actually the columnar or cuboidal cells. But such columnar or cuboidal cells that bear cilia are called ciliated epithelial tissues, and they are found in the inner lining of alimentary canal. Then there is columnar epithelial tissue. So columnar epithelial tissues are composed of single layer of column like cells that are found in the inner lining of alimentary canal. Okay, so the epithelial tissue section is clear now. Then we would move on to the nervous tissues. So this nervous tissue is made of elongated cells called neurons. So what are neurons? They are elongated cells that make up the nervous tissue. So these neurons, they have the ability to transmit information through electrical and chemical signals. Okay, then let's talk about the connective tissue. So connective tissue, they are most abundant and they function in linking, connecting or supporting other tissues and organs in the body. So then the connective tissue are of three different types, that is the fluid connective tissue, the supportive or skeletal connective tissue and connective tissue proper. So this fluid connective tissue is composed of, or it consists of two types of connective tissue, that is the lymph and the blood. So lymph and the blood are the two types of fluid connective tissue. This fluid connective tissue actually has a fluid matrix. Okay. Now what is lymph? Lymph is actually a straw colored fluid that surrounds the cells. And what is blood? We know that blood helps, it is a fluid connective tissue that helps in the transportation of respiratory gases in our body. So this is about the fluid connective tissue. Then moving on to the supportive or skeletal connective tissue. So this skeletal connective tissue is again of two types. One is cartilage and the other is bone. So what is cartilage? Cartilage is a connective tissue in which the intercellular matrix is composed of proteins and it is slightly hardened by the presence of calcium salts. Then there are bones. Bones are also a skeletal connective tissue and the bone cells are embedded in hard matrix and they are strengthened by fibers and hardened by the presence of calcium and phosphorus salts. Okay. Then there is connective tissue proper. So there are various types of connective tissue proper, that is adipose tissue, areolar tissue, yellow elastic tissue, reticular tissue and white fibrous tissue. So what is adipose tissue? Adipose tissue actually consists of oval or round shaped cells that are filled with fat globules. So they help in the storage of fat. Then there is areolar tissue. So areolar tissue consists of ground substance that can be called as matrix. It also consists white and yellow fibers and irregularly shaped cells that are scattered in this matrix. Okay. Then there is yellow elastic tissue. So yellow elastic tissue are thicker than those found in areolar tissue and it has considerable strength and remarkable elasticity and they have very little amount of matrix. Okay. Then there is reticular tissue. So reticular tissue consists of star shaped cells with protoplasmic processes. And finally, there is white fibrous tissue. So white fibrous tissue contains compactly arranged white fibers lying almost in parallel bundles. Okay. So now just quickly revise everything that we have studied today. We saw different types of animal tissues. Four major types of animal tissues were muscular tissue, epithelial tissue, nervous tissue and connective tissue. So under muscular tissue there are three types, that is cardiac muscles, voluntary or striated muscles, involuntary or non-striated muscles. So cardiac muscles are only present in heart, they are involuntary muscles. Striated muscles have striations, they are voluntary muscles as they are under the direct control of one's will. And non-striated muscles do not have striations and hence they can also be called as smooth muscles. They are involuntary in nature as they are not under the direct control of one's will. Then there are epithelial tissues. So epithelial tissues are protective layer of cells that covers the surface of body and lines the internal organs. Under epithelial tissues there are glandular tissues or glandular epithelial tissue, squamous epithelial tissue, cuboidal epithelial tissue, ciliated epithelial tissue and columnar epithelial tissue. So glandular epithelial tissue is involved in the release and production of secretory products. Squamous epithelial tissue consists of flat cells that are found in the walls of blood vessels, skin, etc. And cuboidal epithelial tissue consists of tube-shaped cells and are found in lining parts of the body like kidney tubules, walls of respiratory bronchioles, etc. Ciliated epithelial tissues are either columnar or cuboidal cells that bear cilia and can be found in respiratory tract. Then there are columnar epithelial tissues that are composed of single layer of column-like cells and are found in inner lining of alimentary canal. Then we talked about nervous tissues. So nervous tissues are composed of or is made up of elongated cells called neurons, and these neurons have the ability to transmit information through electrical and chemical signals. Then there are connective tissues. So connective tissues are the most abundant tissues in our body, and they function in linking, connecting or supporting other tissues and organs in our body. So connective tissues are again of three types: fluid connective tissue, supportive or skeletal connective tissue, and connective tissue proper. So under fluid connective tissue, there are two types. Fluid connective tissue has a fluid matrix. So lymph and blood are the two types of fluid connective tissue. Lymph is a straw colored fluid surrounding the cells, whereas blood is a fluid connective tissue that helps in transportation of the respiratory gases in our body. Then there are skeletal or supportive connective tissue. So the skeletal connective tissue are of two types, that is cartilage and bone. So cartilage consists of intercellular matrix that is composed of proteins, and it is slightly harder due to the presence of calcium salts. Then there are bones cells. These the cells of bones are embedded in hard matrix strengthened by fibers, and they are hardened by the presence of calcium and phosphorus salts. Then there is connective tissue proper. So there are different types of connective tissue proper, that is adipose tissue, areolar tissue, yellow elastic tissue, reticular tissue and white fibrous tissue. So adipose tissues actually consist of oval and round shaped cells that are filled with fat globules. Areolar tissue consists of ground substance that can also be called as matrix, white and yellow fibers and irregular cells that are scattered in the matrix. Then there is yellow elastic tissue that are thicker than those found in areolar tissue. It has considerable strength and remarkable elasticity. Then reticular tissues, they consist of star-shaped cells with protoplasmic processes. Then there are white fibrous tissue that contain compactly arranged white fibers lying almost in parallel bundles. Okay. So I hope you all would have got some great insights by watching today's video. Please do not forget to like and share the video. Till then, thank you for watching.